Hi everybody, here with the third video in the What Are the Assessors Looking For When They Mark My Essays series. Well, this time we're looking at Section C, argument analysis, and considering what it is that we need to be focused on. If you haven't yet been able to see Section A and Section B, the videos that we've made on those, I strongly suggest that you go and take a look at them. What you'll see in there is that the basis for today's video comes down to the Expected Qualities document, and you can find that with a quick Google, VCE English Expected Qualities, and you will find something that looks like this that's there on your screen now. And we'll see there that we have three criteria for each of the marks and the way that they are used to help guide the assessors towards the score that you will eventually get for your argument analysis. We're going to look at them one by one, starting with the top. And when we take a look at it here, down the bottom of this ladder, we have, someone showing little understanding in the material or a limited knowledge of the arguments presented. At a 4, we have a limited understanding of the arguments presented and the points of view. You'll notice that everything mentioned so far is about just knowing the arguments and being able to show that you understand those arguments. We want to be making sure we're doing much more than that we want to be making sure that we're not just showing that we understand what the arguments are, but how they've been used to, persuade an audience. As we start to get through here, we're really showing an understanding of the arguments and the points of view that are expressed. So, not just being able to identify argument, but how the particular person or people that are being that we're analysing have got that point of view across. Up to where we get up the top here, we have a thoughtful understanding or a perceptive understanding of the arguments presented. And I want you to think about what that means, in that the adjectives that have been used to describe, how well you've done with the arguments have moved from knowing and understanding to now having a perceptive or a thoughtful understanding. So that's really getting to that idea of this is why that argument has been used, or these are the ways that that argument could, lead a reader to think or act or feel. These are the multiple impacts of that language and that argument and how it might have an impact on the audience. So it's more than just identification, and it's more than just saying, oh, that word would make them feel guilty or something as, banal as that. It's about being able to show that you understand why that person, in their point of view, has constructed arguments in a certain way to lead their audience to think, act, and feel. And if we're going to have a thoughtful and a perceptive understanding, we're going to be thinking about who that person is, how they've presented themselves to their audience. We're going to think about who the audience is and how they are going to respond. One thing about the Section C in the exam is that there's always a definite person, a persona that is delivering it, someone with a position, a farmer, a primary school principal, a manager of a supermarket, and there's always a specific audience to whom they are writing it for. It's not just Joe Blogs on the street speaking to everyone. So if we're going to have that perceptive understanding and that thoughtful understanding, we're going to take those things into consideration. Secondly, you're going to see what I regard as the most important criteria here, and that is about the ways in which written and visual language is used to persuade. When we're looking at the 1, 2, and the 3, we're talking about a limited knowledge of the ways that written and visual language is used. So, we've got that word limited there, obviously meaning that it hasn't quite got the job done. Describing the ways in which written and visual language is used, that's a key word when it comes to just getting a 4 if we're looking to go higher than that, because it's just describing the arguments. It's not actually analysing how they've been used and what it is that's being achieved through there. Basic awareness, some awareness. What we're looking at up the top here is, insight into the ways in which written and visual language is used to persuade. Now, you'll notice that in each of these, it says written and visual language. One question I get a lot of is what happens if you don't analyse the visual? And students, sometimes come up with these ideas as like, oh, you can't get above a 3 or anything like that. And there's no, sort of mandatory rules, like that. However, if we consider that everything there says written and visual language, if you don't analyse the visual language, you're not doing what half the criteria is asking you to do. So I'm sure you can see the importance of it from there. But looking at the insight into which ways in which written and visual language is used to persuade. And as it gets to the very top, sophisticated insight. So when we look at persuasion, we want to be thinking about how it is that the arguments have had an impact. how it is that the arguments have led the readers to think. I keep saying readers, it could be an audience of someone speaking. How it's led them to think or act or feel a certain way. And we want to be making sure that that's really insightful, that it's not just saying, well, this word always will have this reaction. It's about that ability to show that language can have multiple impacts, that it'll impact some people differently, and that, the argument can lead someone to feel a certain way, and once they are feeling that way, they can be led to feel another. I've done a whole range of videos on Section C where I go into depth with all of that advice. I don't want to, spend too much time on it here, but please make sure you check them out. Instead, what I want you to focus on is the language that's going to really trigger you towards that. And a couple of things that I really want you to remember. The word through can be a really good vehicle for you to get from, okay, I was showing that I understood what the argument was. Now I'm going to say through this, Davis is able to, or through this, Davis leads his reader, or through this, Davis, confronts, or whatever it might be. It's that bridge between you showing, yep, I understood what the argument was, which is getting us, onto the ladder. But then this idea of like through this, it has an impact. That can be the word that can lead you to those think, act, feel statements that can help you, rise further and further up. You might want to say thus if you've shown an understanding of multiple arguments or multiple strategies or things that you notice that the writer or the speaker had done. At the end of that, you can start your next sentence with thus. The audience is moved towards, thus, the audience is led to feel, whatever it might be. It's that way of saying, yeah, I understand. I've put all those arguments there in front of you. I have shown you that I've seen those arguments and understood them. Thus, this is the impact of it. That can be a really great word to use. This allows, this leads, the reader is moved to. You notice that type of language is all there because it's talking about the intention of the language, that it's there to lead the reader or to allow them to, allow the writer to do something to them or move to. We don't want to be getting caught in saying things like this makes the reader or this forces the reader. A, because, we can't really say that with any degree of certainty. And B, it's a really black and white way of looking at it in this way that anytime that word is used, it will make the reader do this. We want to be making sure that we're just being a little more subtle than that and showing some of the more subtleties that are there. Finally, when it comes to the expected qualities, it's about your language use, as it has been for Section A and Section B. And I'll give you the same advice that I've given in those videos. Practice, practice, practice. Look at sample pieces. There's plenty here on this YouTube channel that you can copy and paste and start to look for. There are plenty that your teacher will be able to give you, I'm sure. But it's about having those sentence structures. And the beauty of it is that even though the content will change wildly from year to year in terms of, who the person is and what issue they're speaking about, the way that we discuss argument and the language we use around it will remain the same. So if you get those pillars of language, and what I mean by that is, like the sentences and the sentence starters, the strong things that are always there in your writing, all you've got to do is fill in around them with the content that is specific to the arguments that you're finding in that particular year of the exam. And when you start to get used to that, you're going to be more confident with your language. You're going to be able to write more. You're going to be able to write, a clearer and more fluent piece. So, whilst it's not easy, it is straightforward. There's so much going on with Section A and B that is all just, crammed into those criteria. With Section C, you want to make sure that you're not straying too far from that think, act, feel that we've spoken about plenty of times. I've put a point there on the slide that you can see at the moment to remember that the examiner will have read the material, just like they will have read or viewed the text that you are speaking about in Section A and B. So don't waste time explaining it to them. Some years when we're looking at exam responses, there are students that almost take on this persona like, oh, I better explain what all the piece was about and who this person was and what they're arguing, rather than just actually getting to the analysis of how that person has put arguments together in order to have an impact on their audience. So you want to make sure that you're not wasting time with explaining the piece. For some reason, students do that a lot with the visual. It's like they have this understanding that the assessor might not have seen the visual and they just talk about all the elements of it. It's not what you're there to do. You're there to focus on why the visual has been included, how it complements the arguments, and the different ways that it can lead the audience to think, act, and feel that are going to help that writer persuade. So what's my main focus? Your main focus has to be how arguments and the language used within those arguments have been used to lead an audience to think, act, feel a certain way. At that very basic level, that's going to look like sentences like, by opening with an anecdote, Jones is able to create a rapport with his reader by providing a relatable experience. Okay, that's getting there. It's leading to how they might act or how they might feel. By using the word toxic, Johnson, shows just how serious the situation is. Not great analysis, but it is analysis. It's saying, right, this word is having this impact. It's leading them to feel this way about the issue or whatever it might be. Making sure that that's our base point and that we get better and better and more insightful with how we go from there. But essentially, the things that the assessors are assessing, as we've seen by looking at this document, the expected qualities, are all about that analysis of why certain arguments or language have been used and what is achieved through that. So make sure that you're getting your highlighter out when we're looking for how we can check this with our drafts, and that we're highlighting any sentence where we're really engaging in that analysis of how the language has been used to lead the reader to think, act, or feel a certain way. That's what we want to be engaging in. That's where we score our points and do the job and get everything going the way it needs to be doing. So that's what we need to be heading towards. Just like with the other two sections, of course, you're going to have areas where you have to introduce the argument or use quotes in order to show that you've understood what the argument is. That's natural. You can't highlight the whole piece. It can't all be analysis. You have to have that basis there. But just make sure you've got that balance right and that you don't have a piece that's got heaps of explanation and summary of argument and very little actual analysis of it. You want to be making sure that anytime you're bringing up evidence, anytime you're bringing up a quote or showing something you understood about the piece, that it's always leading you towards that analysis of how that language or that argument has led the reader to think, act, or feel. Guys, I hope that you've got a lot out of today's video. If there is still something that you're thinking about or something that I might have said that you think, I wouldn't mind clarifying that, jump down into the comments and ask away. I'd only be too happy to help you out there. Take a look at the argument analysis videos that we've got on our channel. We've got previous year's exams and rundowns and things like that I think will really, really help you out. But until we see you next time, all the best with your studying for this year and good luck.